we're going to look at one of the most famous shipwrecks of all time, the focus of all those documentaries and Hollywood movies. But there's one version of Titanic we have never seen until this morning.
It's 111 years later, and the Titanic's mystery is yet to be solved. Despite extensive research, there are many intriguing details about the Titanic that historians are yet to crack. However, technological advancements and the discovery of an old camera now provide horrifying and astonishing insights into the events of that ill-fated night. Could the sinking of the Titanic have been avoided? How many more people could have been saved? Join us as we delve into the ghastly details of the discoveries. To understand the Titanic's saga, we need to rewind to March 31st, 1909, the day its construction commenced in Belfast, Ireland. Harland and Wolff, the company that built the ship, poured creativity into crafting this iconic symbol of maritime engineering. The vessel, however, belonged to a trio of ocean liners: RMS Olympic, RMS Titanic, and HMHS Britannic. Before its ill-fated voyage, the Titanic garnered immense popularity, becoming a beacon of the ocean's magnificence. Little did anyone anticipate that its first journey would also be its last. At the time, White Star Line, the ship's owner, basked in prosperity, oblivious to the impending doom. During construction, the Titanic stood as a marvel to the world. It was meticulously designed and crafted with no expense spared, costing over $3 million, equivalent to around $310 million today. Its sheer size was awe-inspiring. It stretched 882 feet and 9 inches long, with a breadth of 92 feet and 6 inches. This grand vessel soared 104 feet from keel to bridge. Despite its grandeur, a threatening shadow loomed above the ship. Tragedy has haunted the Titanic since its inception, claiming the lives of 8 workers through unexplainable accidents over 2 years. Most of these accidents occurred when people fell from the ship or its scaffolding. One particularly chilling story among these tragedies is that of James Dobbin. He was a shipwright whose fate was sealed tragically on the day of the Titanic's launch. James Dobbin met a horrifying end as he was crushed to death during the ship's launch. What makes this incident even more haunting is the fact that around 10,000 spectators were present, witnessing this dreadful event unfold. However, the ship went on to be commissioned on March 31st, 1912, and global attention fixated on it, paying little mind to those who died while working to bring the marvel to life. The Maiden voyage, slated to transport elite passengers from Southampton, England to New York City, drew a crowd of around 100,000, eager to witness history. Unfortunately, none of them realized that within a short span, this monumental journey would take a disastrous turn. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic set sail, embarking on its infamous journey. Its intended route plied Southampton, Cherbourg, Queenstown, New York, Plymouth, Cherbourg, and back to Southampton. Yet the promise of this majestic voyage swiftly turned into a tragedy, catching the world off guard. What are the signs that spelled catastrophe for the Titanic from the onset? Why didn't anyone pay attention to these warnings? We will discover the horrifying truths about this voyage as we delve deeper. The passenger certificate granted to the Titanic allowed it to carry a maximum of 3,547 people. That included 905 first-class passengers, 564 second-class passengers, and 1,134 third-class passengers. Steering this colossal maritime machine were 944 officers and crew, many of whom heroically sacrificed their lives to save as many passengers as possible during the disaster. The third class was a significant source of profit for shipping lines like White Star, and the Titanic was designed to offer these passengers superior accommodations and amenities compared to other ships at the time. When the Titanic was getting ready to set sail, there was a coal strike happening. So, the coal used to power. The ship was gathered from other vessels in the White Star Line fleet. Even though the strike ended before the ship departed, there wasn't enough time to deliver the needed coal, so it had to manage what it had. Before the Titanic left the harbor, there was also a momentary incident that could have halted the journey and potentially saved numerous lives. As the ship moved, it displaced a significant amount of water, causing the SS New York, another docked ship, to break free and veer toward the Titanic. Spectators watched in horror as this happened, but thankfully, or maybe not, the situation was handled, and the Titanic continued its journey. Following the Titanic's sinking, some speculated whether this incident was a sign, suggesting troubled waters lay ahead. It's a thought-provoking idea, but it remains a mystery what might have happened if the Titanic had never left port on that fateful day. The images from its maiden voyage offer a glimpse into the Titanic's massive impact and popularity, transporting us back to the moments before one of history's most infamous maritime disasters. Did you know the Titanic was also on fire when it embarked on its first voyage? It may be unbelievable, but a raging fire had been burning in the ship's coal bunkers for 10 consecutive days before it set sail. For over a century, there's been debate about the fire's role in the Titanic's fate. There are pictures showing the fire damage on the hull, indicating the ship was plagued by trouble from the outset. Reports from the inquiry that followed the disaster revealed that workers battled the coal fire below deck but couldn't extinguish it. Although the fire wasn't directly responsible for the ship's sinking, it significantly weakened the ship's structural integrity, influencing the tragedy's outcome. Photographs discovered by journalist Sonnen Molen revealed a noticeable 30-foot-long dark mark on the ship's hull, directly related to the fire damage. Interestingly, this was the same spot where the Titanic later collided with the Iceberg, marking the end of its journey. Considering these revelations, one can't help but wonder if things might have unfolded differently had the fire not damaged the ship. Another puzzling aspect is why the ship's officials decided to sail despite knowing about the underlying dangers. Was it overconfidence or a disregard for passenger safety? It's a critical detail that presents the Titanic's sinking as a result of multiple complex issues that plagued the ship before it even embarked on its voyage. The Titanic's tragic fate wasn't solely due to errors or bad luck, though. Recent research by historian Tim Moulton also sheds light on a lesser-known aspect of the disaster. The weather conditions that fateful night were ripe for a phenomenon called superrefraction, causing mirages. This mirage might have been a pivotal factor in the Titanic's demise. Interestingly, this atmospheric anomaly was witnessed by a few ships nearby, but its danger went unnoticed. The Titanic's lookouts struggled to spot the iceberg in time due to this mirage, while the nearby freighter, the Californian, remained oblivious to the Titanic's presence. The foggy conditions, with layers of cold air below warmer air, created a deceptive illusion. There was a false horizon, making objects seem nearer than they actually were. When the Titanic fired distress rockets, they appeared much lower than their actual height due to this mirage. The Californian observed these signals but misinterpreted them as a ship sailing away, failing to recognize the urgency of the situation and not rushing to the Titanic's aid. The Californian was a British Leyland Line steamship captained by Stanley Lord that happened to be near the Titanic on the fateful night of April 14 to 15, 1912. The ship was en route to Boston from London, carrying a cargo of wool and other goods. It's known for its role in the Titanic disaster, often surrounded by controversy regarding its proximity to the sinking ship. The Californian was positioned roughly 20 miles away from the Titanic, halted in an ice field for the night. Although it's unclear whether they saw the Titanic's distress signals or not, there were some significant events unfolding from their perspective. Around midnight, Cyril Evans, the Californian's wireless operator, was among those that contacted the Titanic to inform them about the ice field. Evans tried to reach the Titanic to relay messages about the surrounding ice, but his warnings didn't reach the bridge as the Titanic's radio operator had already signed off for the night. Due to this, the Californian didn't hear any response from the Titanic, leaving them unaware of the unfolding tragedy. However, some of the crew on the Californian noticed mysterious lights in the distance. These lights, later confirmed to be distress signals from the sinking Titanic, were misinterpreted by the Californian's crew as non-urgent flares. Despite seeing the distress signals, the crew didn't consider them alarming and didn't take immediate action, assuming they were just part of regular maritime operations. This misunderstanding and lack of action have been subject to much criticism and controversy over the years. It wasn't until morning when the crew on the Californian realized the gravity of the situation. They saw other ships, including the Carpathia, rushing towards the area where the Titanic had gone down. It was then that they realized they might have been closer to the tragedy than they initially thought. Stanley Lord, the Californian's captain, faced harsh scrutiny for the ship's lack of response and its proximity to the sinking Titanic. However, these weren't the only peculiar things about the night. Let's talk about the iceberg that landed the unfortunate last blow as well. This iceberg, as we know, sealed the Titanic's fate on that fateful night of April 14, 1912. As the Titanic navigated through the night, it was unaware of the icebergs lurking in the Atlantic waters. Speculation suggests that the iceberg responsible for sinking the Titanic might have originated from the Jakobshavn Glacier near Disko Bay on Greenland's west coast. This glacier might have formed around 1910 or 1911, drifting northward with the West Greenland current. The iceberg was not supposed to be there, at least not in such large numbers. The year 1912 was an exceptionally cold one, and the ice conditions in the North Atlantic were the worst in 50 years. Some experts believe that a rare alignment of the Sun, Moon, and Earth in January 1912 may have caused unusually high tides that freed more icebergs from the coast of Greenland. Others suggest that variations in the water temperature and salinity of the Labrador Sea may have influenced the iceberg formation and movement. Captain Edward John Smith and his crew were well informed about the expanded drift ice fields compared to previous years as they set sail for New York. The Titanic reportedly received warnings from other ships about the growing ice fields. The French ship, La Touraine, was among the first to warn the Titanic at 5:46 p.m. on April 12th, noting thick field ice in the area. Another steamer, the Rappahannock, encountered similar treacherous waters, possibly sharing information about the dangers ahead with the Titanic on April 13th. On the day of the disaster, the Titanic received numerous reports of ice fields, yet they disregarded each warning. The Coronia alerted the Titanic about icebergs and large fields of ice at 9:12 a.m., followed by the Dutch ship Noordav at 11:47 a.m. Despite these warnings, Captain Smith, confident in the Titanic's capabilities, merely acknowledged the messages. As the day progressed, more warnings poured in, but tragically, they were all dismissed. The Titanic collided with an iceberg, leading to the loss of over 2,500 lives. Interestingly, an old camera recently discovered in the deep ocean revealed startling photos from the Titanic incident. Captain W. Wood of the SS Estonian, a keen photographer, captured an image of a massive iceberg just 2 days before the Titanic sank. Astonishingly, the coordinates recorded by Captain Wood matched the location where the Titanic struck the iceberg. While it's challenging to confirm if this was the exact iceberg, the matching coordinates strongly suggest it might have been the one that caused one of history's most catastrophic disasters. Another photograph taken the morning after the incident by another ship, the SS Prinz Adalbert, could lend more credibility to this claim. The iceberg had a streak of red paint along its waterline, indicating that it had been in contact with a ship's hull. The photograph is the closest we have to identifying the fatal iceberg that caused the tragedy, but it is not certain that it was the same one that hit the Titanic. The iceberg probably melted completely within a few weeks after the disaster, leaving no trace of its existence. One of the earliest detailed accounts of the Titanic's ill-fated night came from Dr. Washington Dodge, a first-class passenger during the voyage. Dr. Dodge was a prominent figure from San Francisco, and he boarded the Titanic's maiden voyage with his wife, Ruth, and son, Washington Dodge Jr. After safely reaching the Carpathia, he wrote a letter that is now regarded as one of the most vivid eyewitness descriptions of the Titanic's final hours. According to his account, the trouble began around 11:40 p.m. when the ship struck the iceberg, jolting him and his wife awake. Reacting swiftly, he sought information about the ship's condition to ensure his family's safety. Initially assured there was no danger, Dr. Dodge remained uneasy and ventured out again. It was then that his steward informed him about the order to wear life jackets. Realizing the severity of the situation, Dr. Dodge promptly guided his family to the starboard boat deck. He secured places for his wife and son on Lifeboat 3, the second boat launched from that side of the ship. His testimony highlighted issues of bias and mismanagement during the crisis. Many lifeboats, including the one Dr. Dodge boarded, were not filled to capacity. Had they been adequately loaded, more lives would have been saved. Additionally, the protocol prioritizing the rescue of women and children before men resulted in delays and more casualties. One Japanese man was even a victim of this particular protocol. After making it to safety following the Titanic disaster, the Japanese civil servant named Hosono was seeking assistance from friends in New York to return home. But his situation took an unexpected turn when a local newspaper dubbed him the lucky Japanese boy. This labeling triggered a media frenzy that turned Hosono's story into a circus. Edward Bewley, the individual responsible for the boat, raised suspicions, suggesting that Hosono and his companion may have disguised themselves as women to board the lifeboat. This assertion, made during the U.S. Senate inquiry, sparked controversy. The Japanese press reacted strongly, branding Hosono as a coward. The societal backlash was harsh, leaving Hosono ostracized. He lost his job, and his story became a cautionary tale in school textbooks, emphasizing dishonor. Back to Dr. Dodge's account, though. His own experience also took a perilous turn as Fifth Officer Lowe began loading the lifeboats on the starboard side. While their lifeboat descended into the water, they realized it was directly in the path of immense water gushing out from the ship's condenser pump. The forceful flow threatened to engulf the passengers in the lifeboat, prompting urgent cries for help. Fortunately, the danger was narrowly averted. Dr. Dodge's account offers a gripping insight into the chaos and mismanagement that unfolded that night in the middle of the Atlantic. It sheds light on the distressing decisions made during the Titanic's evacuation, highlighting the human stories and the challenges faced amid the tragic circumstances. Surprisingly, this photograph was also found to support Dr. Dodge's account of the Titanic disaster. It depicts the chaos as water overflowed the ship's compartments, evoking the desperate struggle of everyone aboard, regardless of age or social standing. In this distressing snapshot, we can see the fight for survival amidst one of history's most harrowing moments, and we are overwhelmed with sadness about the situation. In the Titanic's final hours, rescue efforts were in full swing, aiming to evacuate as many people as possible from the sinking vessel. Of the 2,129 individuals aboard, a little over half lost their lives in the disaster. Surprisingly, for a ship accommodating such a large number, the Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, and even fewer were used. Out of the available 20, only 18 were deployed, and most were not filled to their capacity. Fear of the lifeboats buckling under weight restrained the number of passengers saved, escalating the tragedy. Another troubling aspect was the failure of many lifeboats to return to carry more passengers. Reports suggest that officials feared being swamped by drowning victims or being pulled under by the sinking ship's pressure. This decision left helpless passengers stranded, contributing to further loss of lives. Ironically, the Titanic adhered to the safety standards of its time, meeting the required number of lifeboats as per maritime regulations. This grim reality points to the limitations of outdated safety regulations. The revelation that the White Star Line prioritized aesthetics over passenger safety was even more unsettling as it aimed for fewer lifeboats to maintain the ship's elegance. The ship was designed to float for longer in case of an accident, so that a comprehensive rescue can be planned. However, this plan failed drastically, and the Titanic sank quicker than anticipated. Years after the Titanic tragedy, a significant document also emerged, shedding light on a safety inspector's urgent appeals for an additional 10 lifeboats to be added to the ship. Unfortunately, the profit-driven owners of the Titanic swiftly dismissed these pleas, prioritizing the ship's aesthetics and timely departure over safety concerns. If these appeals had been heeded, approximately 700 more lives might have been saved. Till today, there are debates about the ethical implications of these decisions, questioning the prioritization of aesthetics over human lives. The ship's breakage adds another layer to the Titanic's tragic story. Within minutes of the collision, the vessel began flooding through a compromised hull, worsened by the smoldering fire in the coal bunker. As the ship rapidly filled with water, the breached hull's stress intensified due to the imbalanced weight caused by flooded compartments. The Titanic's hull eventually fractured around 2:17 a.m., approximately 2 hours after the collision, splitting between the third and fourth funnels. This break occurred in an area where the brittle iron rivets, known for their structural weakness, were used, contributing to the ship's fracture. Why substandard materials were employed in a project with an open budget remains a mystery. Although the ship's rapid sinking and the breakage might not be directly linked, the splitting of the ship stands as a pivotal moment in the tragedy's timeline. As the Titanic split, it didn't take long before it disappeared into the frigid waters, claiming thousands of lives. Amidst the chaos and panic on board the Titanic, the engineers in the ship's engine room were a group of unsung heroes that remained steadfastly dedicated to their duty. Led by Joseph Bell, this team of 24 engineers, including specialized roles like electrical engineers, boilermakers, a plumber, and a clerk, played a crucial but often overlooked role in the Titanic's story. These engineers understood the pivotal role of power in the ship's survival. They knew that maintaining power meant a chance for more people to survive. Even when the Titanic tragically split in two, they stood resolute, ensuring the ship's power systems kept running until the very end. Their selfless dedication meant sacrificing their own lives to give others a fighting chance for survival. They were instrumental in the last efforts to maintain some form of communication and potentially save lives before the Titanic met its final resting place on the ocean floor. However, Captain Edward John Smith's contribution during this disaster remains a contentious topic. His whereabouts and decisions during those crucial moments of the disaster continue to be debated, adding another layer of complexity to this tragic tale. Some eyewitnesses, however, dropped their accounts to demystify this haunting question. According to them, moments after the ship collided with the Iceberg, Captain Smith supposedly appeared on the bridge, realizing the end of his 40-year legacy. There are claims that his attitude contributed to this disaster as he overlooked crucial safety drills, preferring trivial activities. Had these important safety drills been conducted, they might have better equipped the crew and passengers to confront the catastrophe, potentially saving more lives. Realizing his folly, Captain Smith supposedly got involved in rescue efforts. One touching tale recounts his supposed rescue of a baby, swimming to deliver the infant to a lifeboat, and then refusing a spot for himself, opting to remain with the ship. However, some narratives suggest he was absent during crucial moments and accused him of abandoning his post when his leadership was most needed. The uncertainty surrounding Captain Smith's fate further intensifies the mystery. While some speculate he survived and lived out his days in seclusion, his body was never recovered, lending credence to this theory, though it remains unverified. His role in the Titanic's tragedy persists as a debate. Was he a hero or a villain? Nobody knows for sure. Recovering bodies from the sea after a tragedy like the Titanic sinking was a daunting and sorrowful task, though. The people involved in this grim task faced the somber reality of retrieving those who lost their lives in the disaster. Despite their efforts, they managed to recover approximately 316 to 337 bodies from the ocean's depths. Shockingly, this accounts for only about 23% of the deceased. The majority of those who perished in the Titanic disaster, tragically, still remain resting beneath the ocean waves, and the captain is probably among them. It's a regrettable fact that, even to this day, there are unidentified bodies among the ones recovered. A significant portion, roughly 42 of them, were laid to rest in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, without being identified. Some passengers traveled under aliases or false names, making it difficult to trace their identities. Additionally, the chaos that ensued during and after the disaster complicated the compilation of survivor lists, adding to the challenge of matching recovered bodies to specific individuals. The efforts to identify these individuals continue, though, as scientists now utilize modern forensic and DNA techniques in ongoing attempts to give closure to these unnamed souls and their families, even after more than a century has passed since the tragic event. Shortly after the sinking of the Titanic, the quest to find its wreck began. However, technological limitations hindered early efforts to find the ship. It wasn't until the latter half of the 20th century that significant attempts were made. In 1985, Robert Ballard led a groundbreaking expedition, utilizing advanced technology to locate the ship. Using a remote-controlled camera, the Argo, Ballard's team captured the first images of the Titanic since its demise, revealing the vessel sitting upright in two parts at the bottom of the ocean. Decades later, advancements in deep-sea mapping enabled a comprehensive digital scan of the Titanic wreck. This groundbreaking technology, a marvel developed by a deep-sea mapping company, produced a detailed digital representation of the ship's full scale. The scan revealed the entirety of the Titanic, from its bow and stern sections to its extensive debris field, yielding an unprecedented amount of data, including hundreds of thousands of images and video footage. This innovative scan is hailed as the largest underwater scanning project in history, providing scientists with an invaluable resource to explore previously inaccessible parts of the wreckage. Park Stevenson, a Titanic analyst, recently hailed the groundbreaking 3D model of the Titanic as a significant leap toward evidence-based research, shedding light on the tragedy's facts rather than relying on mere speculation. The model, created through an extensive scanning process conducted by remote-controlled crafts named Romeo and Juliet, meticulously covered both halves of the wreck and the debris field, capturing over 700,000 images. With this detailed imagery, researchers aim to unravel more mysteries hidden within the Titanic's depths, piecing together the lost history of this historic disaster. This scanning initiative, a result of a collaboration between Magellan Limited and Atlantic Productions for an upcoming documentary, offers an unprecedented level of detail on the wreck's condition. The technology utilized for over 5 years has enabled the mapping of the entire historic site, revealing intricate details like individual shoes, unopened champagne bottles, and even the serial number on a propeller. Beyond serving as a comprehensive resource for researchers to analyze the wreckage, this digital twin acts as a preservation mechanism, freezing the Titanic's current state. Shipwrecks in underwater environments deteriorate over time, with the Titanic being no exception. While it remains accessible for now, the passage of time threatens to erase crucial details forever. However, the scan secures these specifics, ensuring their preservation for future study even if they vanish from the actual site. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out another interesting video by clicking on the link on your screen. See you on the other side.